We will have the questions and the answers that you're not going to hear anywhere else because everybody else is asking weaselly questions and looking for the politically correct answers. That's on tomorrow's program. First, happy United Nations Day. Yes, it is the one day of the year we can all celebrate to the UN by sitting back, kicking back, doing nothing, watching the world go to hell, just like the real United Nations. Actually, some in Washington have a different idea how to celebrate, which I believe puts our liberty in peril. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee, led by Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden, thought it would be fun to rubber stamp passage of Lost. This is the law of the sea treaty that you're not hearing an awful lot about in the mainstream media. Fortunately, Republican Senator David Vitter exercised his right to have the committee defer consideration, and you fall to your knees, and thank God for this guy today. The sea treaty is as ill-conceived as the idea of the United Nations itself. Basically, it says that the resources of the seabed beyond any country's international waters belong to, quote, the common heritage of mankind, and are not to be owned by anybody. Bullcrap. Somebody always owns everything, and in this case, it would be owned by the UN. The pact creates an international seabed authority, which could issue licenses, collect taxes, and create an all-powerful ruling body called the Enterprise that should shake you to the core of your bones. I'll explain in a second. Now, the UN is bad enough, but do we really have to answer to yet another international collection of do-nothings? Worse yet, if participation in Lost, if we participate in it, it could force the U.S. to compromise sensitive information in the name of environmental regulation. The bottom line is this. We need our leaders in Washington to band together against this incredibly bad idea, and they're on the fence. If impartial third-party organizations like the United Nations actually did some good, like helping stop terrorism or preventing Iran from getting a nuke, that would be one thing, but I still wouldn't support it, because in the end, the United Nations and other international organizations do not answer to we the people. Frank Gaffney is president of the Center for Security Policy and was an assistant secretary in the Reagan administration. Frank, you had an ad out today. Do you want a UN on steroids? And I'm looking at this ad. First of all, tell me about the Enterprise. This scares the crap out of me.
Well, I would feel remiss if I didn't start by wishing you a happy UN Day, too.
I've got my tree all decorated at home.
It's right up there with the Great Pumpkin Day.
Yeah, yes, it is.
We got to celebrate. We shouldn't celebrate by ratifying this treaty. The Enterprise is a little different than I think the way you think of it. It is the mechanism that this socialist, redistributionist treaty envisioned would use the part of the seabed that, say, an American company would help identify as a promising place to look for oil or for minerals of some kind, and then would be using our technology, our know-how, our information to go exploit it for the benefit of all mankind. Okay, so that's the problem with the Enterprise. I think you're thinking about the larger the International Security Seabed Authority.
No, hang on just a second. Wait. The Enterprise, as I understand it, could demand that American companies turn over sensitive technology. They can demand money from American companies. True or false?
I think it's mostly true. Okay. The Enterprise works for the International Seabed Authority. Let's just use an example. You've got a place in the ocean where you think there's oil. You want to go drill there. Oil companies in America have said, hey, great idea, give me a permit. The problem is the price of that permit, Glenn, is you're going to have to give the International Seabed Authority, which in turn will give it to the Enterprise, the information about that place. You would actually have to come up with two places. They'll pick which one you get to exploit. The Enterprise gets to exploit the other with your technology.
Oh, beautiful.
If this sounds like, again, a sort of socialism throwback to, the 1970s, that's exactly what this treaty is. And why we would want to do it in the 1990s, to say nothing of the, 21st century, is crazy.
Okay, now the Navy is for this. Bush is for this. The Navy thinks they're going to have a lot of things cleared up in international waters. However, as I understand it, again, this would allow an international body, if we sent our aircraft carriers over and we said we were going to go over to to Iran or whatever, and the international body disagreed with us, they could actually say, you're in violation, and they could stop us. True or false?
Well, I suspect that the way it would work in practice is if we're going to go in there in force, then nobody's going to stop us. But what worries me is what happens in peacetime. When we're operating, then you're absolutely right. The Navy's persuaded itself, particularly its lawyers, that world order, international law will work to their advantage. I don't think so. I think what's going to happen is they're going to be sued in these various courts, and it's just one of the reasons why, you know, we ought to be very chary about rushing into this treaty. I just came from a tremendously impressive press conference in the Senate just a moment ago, in which the minority leader, I should say, Mitch McConnell, and essentially the entire leadership of the GOP has said, sorry, we're not going to have any part of this treaty. Thank goodness.